This week we're visiting the finest horticultural shows in the world. The Floralies in Ghent next Sunday, and this week, of course, on the Embankment in London, the Royal Horticultural Society's Chelsea Flower Show. And as always, it's organised chaos the day before, but you can rest assured that by 4 o'clock tomorrow, for the royal visit, everything will be ready. And the main talking point, well, over the past 65 years, always the same, I think. It's the weather. And goodness, this winter and spring there's been something to talk about. There's some discussion about moving the show, so there's more space for exhibitors and visitors. But for me, I rather hope it never changes. There's that rather special atmosphere in this great big marquee. And this year, it's the turn of orchids. Orchid lovers from all over the world met just a few weeks ago at the Society's Vincent Square Halls. It was the occasion of the Centenary Orchid Conference. A unique event this, 6 years in the planning, and growers from all over the world, from New Zealand to California, coming here. And the keen amateur working away in his spare time, and those hard-nosed commercial fellas investing thousands of pounds breeding new varieties that hopefully will become extremely popular. One completely committed amateur grower who should be able to tell us a bit about that fascination for orchids is Mrs. Ina Haywood. She's come up from Devon with a very carefully selected 10 plants from her cherished collection.
They don't like neglecting. Orchids are very tough and will take a long time for you to kill them off. But they're like pets. They do miss you.
Really?
Definitely. There's something about the orchid growers that are akin, and wherever we go, all over the world, we have congresses such as this, and so at all these occasions you meet up with amateur growers. It's a friendship base. People who grow orchids are very quickly addicted. They say it's the orchid bug. Once you've got it, you never get rid of it.
And what's the first thing you'll do when you get back home after the show?
Go and see if my orchids are still alive.
The one thing the British are world famous for is their detail. You can have spectacular flower shows all over the world, but you won't find as many different species or hybrids of orchids in one place as we have here. There are prizes for new hybrids, for new species, but there are also awards made for cultural skills. And this plant, the Orangus, has had 4 awards for every year since '82. And here's a chance in a million. You won't see a cymbidium like this, and it was just one of those chance crosses, completely seedless, never be repeated. A collection flown in from the States, a tiny tabletop exhibit that really had the judges on the edge of their seats. So small, and yet such a marvellous collection, all beautifully grown. One of this country's best-known commercial growers is Ray Bilton.
Well, the trade has changed quite dramatically over the years. A few years back, let's say back at the beginning of the century, we could depend on people like the Rothschilds and the Schroders. Perhaps just 5 customers could support a company like ourselves.
And how big then would your nursery be then compared to now?
Well, in those days, I think we probably had around about 10,000 square feet. Today, we have around about 60,000 square feet. and we have less people working today than we had in those days, a lot less, in fact.
Now, what about this Chelsea exhibit then? That's going to be a bit of a tease, I should think, and you're responsible for the overall design.
Well, I've got the main responsibility for designing it. In fact, I must say that Keith Andrews also is involved in that design work. And Keith, in fact, will be staging around the monument itself with these disers, and that's going to be quite a spectacle. I think the difficulty with it is pulling together 8 separate groups to make it a single unit and make it look like one group.
Because you're exhibiting in competition with one another, aren't you?
That's correct, but we do, in fact, get on well together, believe it or not.
Well, Keith, how's it going then? I mean, you're cooperating all right, you fellas?
No problems at all. We've known each other for a number of years, and we've always been the greatest of friends, and it's working out extremely well. We're thrilled to be here.
I mean, normally there'd be 6 or 7 gold medals, wouldn't there, from the various companies here?
Indeed, but we felt that this was the year of the centenary conference celebrating 100 years of orchid growing in this country, and we wanted to come together to put on a major display at Chelsea Flower Show.
And how are your Deezers then? Are you happy with those?
Well, I'm particularly thrilled to have these at the show because this is the first time that any quantity has been shown at Chelsea. In fact, we have about 560 plants here today, and the very first hybrids were made in this country back in 1880, and so we're absolutely thrilled. It's going to be a terrific do for us.
It's been pretty wet and cold up in Norfolk this spring, but Tony Clements had his African violets tucked up in the warm.
Ladies of Heatherset WI, now you're all sitting comfortably, I'd like to talk for a few minutes about the African violets that we grow here. First of all, I should tell you they were discovered nearly 100 years ago in Tanzania in East Africa by a German botanist. His name was Baron von St. Paul, and in his honor they are called St. Paulias. That's the proper name for the African violet. What he found was this plant here, the wild violet from Tanzania, one of the species. In fact, this one has recently become extinct, Sympolia magungensis, in its natural habitat, and only exists now in collections. But that is an original, a wild violet. From it have been bred all the lovely ones we see today. Now, this little violet is called pipsqueak, and it's the smallest violet in the world. I found it in America about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was on its own. It's the only one of its sort, so tiny. So we set to breed it some offspring. And we crossed it with another miniature, and not quite so tiny as that. And from the children they produced, we managed to raise a whole new series called the Fairy series of tiny violets, little micros that you can grow even in a brandy glass, and in different colours. And I've called them the Fairy series, and I'm going to show them at Chelsea this year.
The greatest fun of all is raising new varieties. We do that by crossing 2 strains and producing seed, and when we sow the seed, every one of those seedlings will be different from the other, and we grow them into bloom, and then we see what we've got. And that is how there are so many different colours in African violets.
In 95 years, there has never yet been a yellow African violet. Now, why can't the plant produce a yellow flower? It produces the yellow pigment for the pollen sacs in the centre, doesn't it? The bright yellow eye. One day I believe there will be a yellow petaled violet, and I would like to have it. And I'm offering £1,000 cash prize for the first genuine, undyed African violet. So it may come from this packet of seed, it may come from the next, who knows? But if we all try, we have a better chance of getting the yellow one.
The specimen plants, which we grow for Chelsea and for no other show, they of course were potted. They've been receiving special treatment since January. But that's where the risk comes in, because we've got really no reserve, no backup with those, so the timing has got to be right. Now, you've seen how green they are at the moment. The weather is bad, the light is poor, we've 6 weeks to go. I hope they're going to make it. I suppose my proudest achievement to date is breeding the new series of microviolets, the Fairy series, which are delightful little things, and the result of 5 years' hard work. But I would like to win a gold medal at Chelsea. I've won gold around the country at many shows, and this is my 7th year at Chelsea, and I'd love to get gold. I've had every other medal, bar gold.
Well then, how good are they?
Well, let's have a look, Peter. We had that dreadful weather, as you know. Very little sunshine.
You're not making excuses already,
well,
are you?
last time there were no buds at all, were there? Now, how about that? Just what do you think?
Well, fortunately, I'm not judging.
Well, we've got our fingers crossed.
But they look pretty good to me. Do you recognise that urn? Is it appearing in your local park? Because the parks departments are well represented here. And the real charm of London is its extensive parks. Some may take them for granted, but visitors flood in from all over the world year round. And they've come to expect very high standard from London's historic parks. They have to be kept up to scratch. After all, the superintendent of the Royal Parks is gardener to some pretty important people. Nothing like having the most famous front garden of all to look after, but where else are the responsibilities?
Apart from the main parks here, I look after Buckingham Palace, obviously, and Clarence House, Marlborough House, 10 Downing Street, Houses of Parliament, most of the government and royal buildings in this area.
Goodness gracious, an overawing list, that. And do you ever know, I mean, if you do a really good job here on the front beds, do the royal family say, you know, that fantastic summer bedding?
We never hear directly, but we always know about it.
They let you know, it sort of filters through.
They have their ways, yes. Traditionally, the beds here have always been red. In the spring it's red tulips, in the summer it's red geraniums.
But isn't there a very tight period of change there? I mean, as we look now, the tulips are hardly through the ground.
Yes, we're having a difficult spring this year. They're rather slow coming through. The critical period is that the beds must be planted out with the geraniums for the drooping of the colour.
Well, that's 10th of June, isn't it? Or?
Yeah, so just immediately after Chelsea, we've got to get the tulips out and get the geraniums in, so they're looking good for the drooping of the colour.
And what happens then if it's a late season and the tulips are still in flower?
We have to hope that they'll be finished in time. If they're not, we've got to quietly come along and whip them out and put the geraniums in before anyone has time to complain about it. It's a tremendously satisfying job because the park's so well known, Hyde Park in particular. Anyone in the world, you can go and they say, oh yes, Hyde Park, that's the Speaker's Corner, demonstrations, people, which is lovely. And we get a lot of feedback because they are very popular. People really care very much about them. So yes, it's very nice to feel they're looking after something like that.
Heating costs are a nightmare for glasshouse growers today. Jennifer Adams is responsible for nearly 200 staff, and like all parks officers, her funds have been reduced, so she has to watch the pennies.
The summer is our busiest time because that's when the parks have got most people in them. We then go through a very busy period in the autumn when we've got to get rid of the horrendous quantities of leaves that we get here, particularly plain leaves, as you know, are terrible things to get rid of. I suppose our busiest time of all is May because we're building up to all the ceremonial events then. So we've got the longest daylight hours, very often the hottest days, and maximum peak for everything.
Yes, and grass growing at a phenomenal rate.
That's right, yes. We're trying to keep on top of it at that time before it starts to slow down later on.
But then surely Chelsea drops right in the middle of that in May.
I'm afraid it does, yes. It's very difficult for us because obviously you've got to maintain a high standard at Chelsea. If you're going to go there, you've got to do a good job, which means you have to take some of your best staff off to go down to Chelsea just at the time when you need them to keep on top of everything else in the park.
So what's planned this year? I mean, have you got it all sorted out?
Well, we've got less staff than we've ever had before, and so we're having to rethink slightly what we're doing. We've got a smaller site than usual, and we're going to use bedding plants because we're going to be growing those anyway to go out into the beds.
So all of the material will do 2 jobs then?
Yes, hopefully. If we can get it to Chelsea and back again in really good condition, we'll reuse it in the bedding schemes afterwards.
And will some of that material actually go out into very public places? I mean, like the front of Buckingham Palace?
Depends what condition it is in after Chelsea. If we can get it in good enough condition, yes, it will.
Outside of the main marquee on the 2 avenues, there are over 22 different gardens being built. It's gardens suitable for the front and the back, for the very formal and for the conservation conscious, you know, if you want to attract the wildlife. And if you've ever wondered just how does it all begin, you know, where do those gardens come from? Well, then I can tell you. It all starts in the human mind, and those ideas have to be conveyed to paper on a drawing board. Guy Farthing, you've been designing gardens for Chelsea, I think, for 10 years or so. How do you set about it?
Well, we design it in a similar way to the way we would design someone's back garden if they wrote in to us.
Do you list, then, all of the things that have to be included?
Yes, we start off with a brief, write down all the things that our clients would like to see in their garden, and we look at their own particular site and the problems that creates. The big problem with Chelsea is that you get nearly 250,000 people looking at the garden, and we try and introduce a space where they can actually walk onto the garden to inspect the vegetables.
How do you start? Do you sketch it out on paper and then develop from that?
Yes, I start to think of it, in fact, 12 months before the previous Chelsea garden, to get a feeling of it. And I think of it in 3 dimensions.
Do you?
Rather like a songwriter who doesn't put it on paper straight away. He thinks up the song and then puts it on paper.
Comes from within you.
Well, yes, it's difficult to get a 3-dimensional feel to it if you're drawing on 2 dimensions. This year we've tried to almost go over the top, I think. We've got a patio with a pergola, barbecue and bench, looking across to the water with fountains and waterfalls, over the bridge onto a lawn with a piece of sculpture. Then we go on to the orchard, through to a herb garden with a sundial.
Goodness, you've packed the things in, yes?
Yes, and behind some shrubs, we've got a vegetable garden, fruit cage, shed, greenhouse, and a summer house.
Well, guys, is it beginning to look anything like those sort of atmosphere and feels that you had in your mind?
Well, as the hours go by, Peter, I think, yes, my pleasure grows. The textures and the colours and the smells all come to life, which is something that wasn't on the plan.
And Nick Fain, you were responsible for actually building it. I mean, is this proving an easy plan to build, and how's it going?
Well, we're very happy with it. We've been very lucky with the weather. We had nice dry weather to start with. At Chelsea, if you get 2 weeks of rain before you start building, you get all sorts of problems. So we were lucky there with the weather. We had one heavy day of rain the other day, which didn't help us, because as we have to dismantle the whole thing after the show, we have to mix it in with a fairly light mixture of cement, and so trying to do any brickwork when it's raining is really very difficult indeed.
And the plants, are they up to standard? Because you need some quite big specimens here.
Yes, we've done, they don't come right just at the last minute. We've been working on those really since last August, so we haven't been shocked by those. We've been watching them each day, and I think we're very happy with them. I think they look absolutely marvellous, first class.
Now, for the visitors that are coming from the suburbs and standing at the ropes thinking, goodness, I'd like a garden like that. Come on now, the $100 question, what's it going to cost them?
Well, unless they're going to pay a great deal of money, they're never going to get a garden quite like this, because there are plants here that are really exceptional. They've been grown on for a number of years, and they are specimen plants. So in their garden, they're going to have slightly smaller plants, but the rest of it will remain the same, and it's going to cost something like a newly fitted, redone kitchen would cost.
Oh, it's about 46 feet something, I think.
Let's have a look. So, I don't know whether this one's going to be too deep. Do you think it is?
Lose the effect a bit.
Yeah, what on earth's going on here? What are you doing?
Well, it's going to be a birthday cake.
Are you serious? You're sending me up.
No, it's a birthday cake.
It's going to be a birthday cake. This is going to be the centre candle. At last year's Chelsea show, everybody kept coming up and sort of saying, what are you going to do next year? And then decided that it was will be our 5th year, and so therefore why not a 5-year birthday cake? So
there you have it.
And now there you have it.
Let's try this one.
Let's
take that one.
I really think that was too high.
How about that? For the average amateur growing pinks in the garden, shortly after the main flowering, this is usually towards the end of July, perhaps early August, is the most satisfactory time for them to take their cuttings. They root very readily then. Once bud initiation has started, it will obviously go to flower, so it's possible to have a few flowers that autumn. Although my advice would be to take those flowers off those young plants, to establish a good plant first, and look forward to a handsome display the following summer.
Chelsea definitely is very important to us. We've developed now a mail order business with the pinks.
Growing every year, fortunately.
Yes, fortunately.
Which is what we're aiming to do, after all.
Let's hope the birthday cake crowns it all.
Well, I jolly well hope so. There's a great deal of work gone into it, so, and I hope that the general public will appreciate it.
Use that pipe fitting, we'll just have to find some other means of getting it to stay in there. But that's the sort
Well,
of
that's
shape you're
your
looking
problem.
for.
That's your problem. I just want it bigger.
Oh, and it looks much more like a cake now, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. We've actually now managed to solve the problem of the flame. We've used a stop-end gutter, which has been really quite successful. We're thrilled to bits about it.
I love the frill. I mean, I think it really looked like a cake when that went in.
Yes, in fact, it took me about 6 hours to machine the 32 yards of material.
And what about the pinks themselves? Have you got enough?
Yes, we've got close to 8,000 blooms, and I think we'll have as good a display as our previous 4 years here.
Mary Clemmy, please go to the meeting point. Mary Clemmy to the meeting point, please.
I've brought in some plants and flowers from the West Indies, Trinidad, Tobago and Barbados for the Chelsea Flower Show. And I'm very eager to know how they have arrived. It takes a lot of time to prepare these plants to move from one climate to another. And I think at this present time, at the crucial moments, they are beginning to react already. So therefore, I must endeavor to get them in a bath as quickly as possible to recover, or else the whole exercise would be aborted. And months and years of planning would have gone to zero. So therefore, the preparation of the plants, like using balloons and files and foil and some of everything that you can imagine, so as to preserve them in a condition for competition. Needless to say, you are looking at the most sophisticated competition in the world for plants and flowers. I have designed a rainforest, which I'm trying to set up in London. The time is very limited, which you have to set this all up and have it completed by lunchtime on Monday. So the pressure is on.
Carl, do you have that moss in the tropics? I mean, does it grow with you, bright green?
Yes, some of this moss comes from cocoa trees, and we mix it up together with sphagnum. That's why it's as green as it looks there.
Now, what about the conditions under which these plants are grown? Have they come from gardens?
Some from gardens, some from in the wild, and as I said before, some from the cocoa trees.
well, the wild plants, can you show us some of those? I mean, in the varieties you've got here, what's come from the wild?
That plant, the heliconia, that's from the wild.
And then what else have you got here then? Is it strelitzia? Does that grow with you?
We have strelitzias, we have anthuriums, we have palms, we have ginger lilies. The majority of the plants that we are staging here are long-lasting plants. Obviously, they're from very far away, and therefore we must bring something that will go the distance. But we do have a backup squad as such.
You've got some first reserves?
Yes, yes.
And where do you keep those then?
So if the referee puts one off, we put another one in.
At this show, you can cross the Atlantic at the turn of a head, and from Carl Busby's ginger lilies to Raymond Everson's clematis.
I like to think that I'm perhaps a little bit of a botanist, a nurseryman, and hopefully a businessman, because if you want to be able to do all these things, one has to run a commercial nursery and have a business to fund expeditions and to go out and collect plants in the wild. And I think I'm very fortunate enough to be able to try and do all of those things. I think, Pat, that top growth there on that particular one that you're doing, yes, just prune that back. We don't need that soft top growth. That'll bush out nicely then. Clematis, I suppose, are reasonably easy, I think, now, but very frustrating. This year is a very backward year, so I think I'm going to have to put heat on very soon indeed. Last year, I think I reached as near perfection as I can possibly get. This year, I'm a little bit nervous at the moment, and I guess in a few days' time, I'm going to be able to put the heat on, or have to put the heat on, to get the best out of the flowers and get them opening just right.
And your interest in clematis has taken you all over the world, I believe.
Yes, I've really been, I think, very, very fortunate in the last few years. In the autumn of 1981, I was able to join an international team. We went into the Sichuan province of China and through to the old part of Tibet. That was a marvelous trip. I found actually about 25 different clematis species. One, the most exciting one, I guess, was Buchananiana, a lovely form of that, and possibly, definitely new to cultivation in the Western world. And that I remember collecting the seed head of that, a very tatty, untidy little thing, and to get that reward of that flowering was absolutely tremendous. And in 1983, the Royal Horticultural Society invited me back to exhibit at Chelsea. We found the interest in the species and some of the more unusual cultivars absolutely tremendous. This year, we're going to take a corner site in the marquee. We found that it's quite nice to display the clematis. So every year we try to create a new design. This I've done, and it has to be a little bit on the same theme, because trying to arrange 3,000 clematis plants with some perhaps total of 6,000, perhaps 7,000 blooms, it's a little difficult. And last year it took my wife and I 4.5 days to stage those 3,000 plants.
What a sea of colour, but they're very tender. How do you get them here?
Well, they are rather delicate, and the sepals do tend to damage, so we have to pack them very carefully indeed, and then we pack them in crates. We leave home just after midnight, and they're all packed into cattle trucks and come down through the cool of the night.
Really, in cattle trucks? Must be the smell of manure that makes the flowers so large.
Well, I think it's perhaps the damp humidity.
They're marvellous. We're spoilt for choice. There's every kind of flower, plant and garden. Tremendous variety. And if you happen to have a stately home, you might even find space for a magnificent layout like this. But it's plants and flowers that really make a flower show. And with the season being a little late, there are some things which are much better than usual. But I think it was the effect of that hot sun on Thursday, which scorched the tips of some of the shrubs and other plants which had been brought out from under glass. And it'll be interesting to see whether the judges take due account of that. Well, I hope you can make it, because a visit to this show is the experience of a lifetime. It's open to members on Tuesday and to the general public from Wednesday to Friday. And if you can't make it, well then I hope you'll join Alan Titchmarsh and myself on BBC Two, Wednesday evening at 8:10, when we'll try and bring you the very best from the show. Until then, goodbye.